Oh, hey, how's it going? I was actually just out here doing my daily meditation on The Last of Us Part 2, but I was actually gonna go sit in the corner over there and just have like a conversation with my imaginary friends about how I'd write The Last of Us Part 3. But if you guys would wanna come with me, we could like walk and talk. I'd be happy to like share the story with you if you're down.
Why are you like this?
Okay, all right, we'll take that as a yes. But real quick though, let's walk as we talk. I want to talk a little bit more about The Last of Us Part 2 real quick, get a little introduction in the way before we get into Part 3. So, thank you. So if you've played The Last of Us Part 2, you might have come to the conclusion that it's so perfect that it doesn't require a Part 3, that this is a great place for the story to conclude and you don't need to hear anything else. I was the same way for a long time. I've actually sat with this game almost every day, and there's not a single second that goes by where I don't think about the grand scale about this game and how much this story impacted me and inspired me creatively, but not only as an artist, but like as a fucking person. So now settling with it just being Part 2 is fine with me, right? However, after really just kind of like sitting and thinking about it, I've come up with this idea that gives me hope for a Part 3, but as I said, I can't help share it and just not talk about it, you know what I mean? So if you don't know already what Neil Druckmann already said about a Part 3, he said it would have to be a story that demands to be told. And in my opinion, this is a story that truly does demand to be told. So, I know that's pretentious to say, and maybe, who cares, it's fine. So, let me first give an introduction off of where the last game leaves us. And probably by the time we arrive at our location, we'll be complete at this. So, looking at the end of Part 2, there's this kind of clues at where we could see this going for a Part 3. When I played the game for the first time, I understood that Ellie has probably moved on from Joel, but where does she go from here? Could be a lot of things. Is she happy? Is she sad? Is she going into hiding? It felt very much like they were gonna give her the Luke Skywalker treatment, that she would be on this stranded island, that she would be exiled away from Jackson or something. Maybe someone just comes to go look for her, right? But more romantically, and probably more simply, what if she just kind of went to Jackson and we just didn't get that? That could very well be the case here, and everything I'm about to tell you will be nothing but straw. But assuming that's not the case, here's what I'm thinking. The Last of Us Part 2 works so well off of subtlety. It lives and breathes its subtlety for every single one of its characters, and you notice this especially from Ashley Johnson's performance. She's the one that plays Ellie, if you don't know that. So much of what angers about Part 2 is driven by that subtlety that I'm talking about here. It's driven by what we think we know about Ellie, but then more so about what we don't know. It works in both ways, favoring both sides, and it's part of the impact that the game is meant to have. It's that moment of realization of how wrong we were about Ellie, how little we really knew about her and all the characters in the game. But that's obviously shown quite bluntly with playing as Abby in the second half, empathizing with her side of the story. But the subtlety of Ellie really pays off through the final moment of the game, where we still don't even know for sure what's going to happen next. And so we're meant to feel sort of detached as a player. And yet, this is one of the most main reasons I would argue that this is the greatest piece of media content of all time. Sure, some of cinema's best works involve characters that the audience will feel attached from, the whole film, but as a video game where you actually have to control that which you are so detached from for over 25 hours, have they ever done that before on this scale? What does that teach the audience by the end? What kind of takeaway does that look like? I still can't even describe it, and that's how much that risk that Naughty Dog took truly paid off. I gotta say. So now what's so fascinating about the other video games have worked off of this passive experience where the player is one and the same with the protagonist of the story, even so much that they will talk to themselves so that the audience never feels too disconnected from them. And sure, The Last of Us Part 2 has this moment of that, but it never branches off more than like Ellie or Abby saying, fuck Seattle, or fucking scars, or just meaningless complaints, to be honest with you. Now that's not until we see these scattered flashbacks along the way that makes us say, oh my God, Ellie has known this whole time about Joel's lie. Oh my God, in this final scene with her and Joel, this is why her reaction to Joel's death is more out of anger and hate than it is a true moment of defeat and fear, as she expresses about being alone. And this is what we actually get to see when Joel tells her that he lied. And deep down inside, it's so clear. I think that Part 2 does an excellent job of this. Ellie's primary want is not to exact revenge on Abby for killing Joel. It's for her life to mean something. And that is exactly what my version of Part 3 is all about here. Now, I'm not done quite yet, though. I know we're almost there. But real quickly, I want to reference another scene in Part 2 to back up my points I'm going to make about Part 3 here. If you notice the scene, right after Ellie has come out and killed Nora, she has this kind of violent aftershock and disbelief when she walks back into the theater. And our first thought is to show Jesse and Dina where Abby is on the map, and not the blood and scars on her face. Blood that is not even hers, by the way. So Jesse and Dina can see that it's not her blood on her face, and we can see how much of a different person she is in that moment. But immediately, they let her talk. They don't say a single thing about what she said. They sit her down, they get her cleaned up, and they get her to safety, away from this whole mission of revenge for 1 second. So there's this moment where Dina is tending to Ellie's wounds on her back. And there's this moment where Dina just can't see Ellie's face for the first time, but we can. We can see from Ashley Johnson's performance, this is the moment where she's thinking about something we don't need to know. And shortly after, we'll find out via flashback, oh fuck, she knows that Joel lied. This is the moment that Neil Druckmann is telling us, look closer into Ellie. There's something about her that we don't know, that she's not gonna tell us unless we look deeper ourselves and find out ourselves. So in this moment, sure, she could be thinking about the past with Joel, but really, we see her say, just with Dina, the woman that Ellie loves the most, the love of Ellie's life, Ellie simply says, I made her talk. And this is the one moment in the whole game where Ellie actually has the courage to say how she feels about the revenge that she's doing. Everything else could just be an act. Everything else is this front that she's putting out, that she's okay with it, that this is exactly what she has to do, and she's strong enough to do it, and then there's nothing else, there's no other way to go about her life. It's the first and really the only moment that she goes and shows to another character, holy fuck, I think I did something wrong. I think I might have gone too far. I might not know what I'm really doing. So what does she say after that? I don't want to ever lose you, Dina. She says it with tears in her eyes, because in this moment, if she's gonna say what she's not gonna tell anyone else in this entire game, then I can truly believe this is the moment that we will see the realest version of Ellie ever in the entire series of Last of Us thus far. It's with that expression of desire and this other expression of desire at the end of the game with the porch conversation with Joel that everyone loves to talk about, where she fights tears again. She says, trying not to tremble. And this is the most difficult cross of hers to bear. My life could have fucking meant something, and you took that from me. These are the main two things, the main two clues The Last of Us Part 2 points to what a Part 3 could be. Ellie's relationship with Dina, and Ellie's fight for her life to mean something. And so if you stayed this long to watch this exploration here, thank you. I now am about to start to this goddamn spot here. Let's talk how I would write The Last of Us Part 3. We open the game 10 or so years later. Everything is still the same, perhaps more overgrown than it was before. Our first thought might be, where is Ellie? Well, she's the first person we see. She's alone, she's intensely depressed, and she's living alone in this abandoned house that she's been able to call home in an abandoned suburb. She's so lonely and depressed that she's sort of at this farewell tour phase of her life where she's come so close to death and lost so much meaning that death is really all she wants now. She feels some guilt for her immunity. She feels some hatred, but she feels this at this point because any and all purpose that could have once been had for her is now gone. She misses Riley, she misses Joel, she misses happiness. She doesn't have much human interaction. It's rare that anything out of the ordinary really happens in the area where she's at. And then this specific day that we're with her, we find Ellie now in her darkest place yet. She's about to hang herself. She stands on a stool. She fastens the rope until a couple of young, endangered boys, estranged from their homes, come near the area. She hears them calling out for help in the distance, going through their other houses until they start to approach hers. She stops her suicide, obligated to help them now. She doesn't want them to walk away or walk into this dead body in this house, right? They explain that their home is up in flames. They don't know where their mom is. They need help. She joins forces with them, taking this sort of Joel-like role, being a parental figure, briefly, for these two kids. And as Ellie follows these kids towards the smoke in the distance, this area starts to become too familiar for her. It's Jackson. It's mostly in flames. It's nearly unrecognizable. Ellie is tempted to stay back and leave them until they get too close, and a woman's voice calls out to one of the boys. JJ, get over here. Ellie turns to see the woman on a horse, accompanied by another man calling out to them. Ellie freezes. She knows this woman. It's Dina. The man is severely injured, barely hanging on. As Dina gallops closer towards him, he falls to the back of the horse, hurting himself further. Ellie runs to his aid to help him up further, and this is when Ellie and Dina lock eyes, unable to say a word to each other, until a man with silver hair on another horse gallops past them. Get on, he calls them. Ellie is determined to just run and turn back on foot, but they're too far deep in the fire now. She takes the man's hand and joins him on the horse, and he says, I never thought we'd meet again like this. It's Tommy. Ellie is just shell-shocked. She's holding on the back of Tommy for dear life as she speeds through this burning Jackson. Everything is in chaos. Nobody has a home anymore. There's not a single survivor except this small group now. And Ellie is forced to bring them to the place where she's staying. She couldn't live with herself if she just abandoned them, especially Dina. She shows them to the suburbs, and there's no time to address the 10-year beef that she has still between her and Tommy, but also her with Dina. The man that Dina was with is dying, and Dina's barely able to handle it. The first night they stay in Ellie's suburb area, he dies the next morning. And on the other hand, Tommy has nothing but guilt about Ellie. He tries to keep his distance away from her only because he feels responsible for making her the way she is. She's different now. Everybody knows it, everybody sees it, it's disturbing. He's actually quite how Joel was in The Last of Us Part 2 before his death. He's always kind of walking on eggshells around Ellie. He wants to make her happy, etc. But meanwhile, Dina has started to discover firsthand how far gone Ellie is. And some time after the death of her last lover, JJ has maintained a bond with Ellie as they start to have this new sort of camp in the area. Dina sees this, but Ellie is purposely keeping her distance from Dina. She has this habit of going out and doing things on her own during the day to do this private kind of ritual of killing off infected robotically to quote-unquote protect those around her. But it's really just to put herself closer and closer to the occasion of death because she is almost addicted to that feeling of I could just end it all right here. I could just let them kill me. But the problem is, I'm immune. So I have to let them fucking rip me apart and eat me to shreds if I really want to die. And so eventually Dina starts to get curious about this. She follows Ellie in the middle of nowhere, and they finally confront everything between them, past and present. Dina says how she still has feelings for her and loves her. It's quite an emotional, very human moment where Ellie expresses the same feelings. But she says that she has just lost her will to live, and she demands a kind of respect from Dina to just allow her to fucking die. Ellie tries to let herself die to a nearby clicker, but Dina charges at her, and they engage in this scuffle. Dina's not gonna let her fucking die. Dina's not gonna let that happen. It's ridiculous to her. They're pushing and they're shoving until finally this clicker just lunges and bites Dina right in the arm. Ellie just goes into full shock. Ellie has no time to think now. Now, she is really fucked up. So if anything has ever given her something to live for now, this surely has. And so she goes full speed ahead to bring Dina back to the camp, find help immediately, but there's nothing. Tommy tells of a group nearby that they believe could have been the ones that burned down Jackson, and that they have this obsession with discovering this cure for themselves, alternatively from the Fireflies. Now, they're like witch doctors, more than anything. Ellie is now convinced, though, that she can go angry Ellie mode one last time and force them at gunpoint to save Dina. JJ insists that he comes with her. And so Tommy, who was once all about exacting revenge, advises against it. This time, saying that there may be something they could do at the camps. What if they find the proper supplies? Ellie says there's no time to find supplies, so she leaves in secret with JJ to go pursue this group. And so when they arrive, everything goes according to plan. She enters one of their labs. It's rather similar to how Joel stormed the lab at the end of the first game, holding the doctors at gunpoint. But this is different. She forces them to operate on Dina, amputate her arm, do something, anything possible to save this woman. And so they start the operation with both Ellie and JJ holding them at gunpoint. It all goes according to plan until one of the doctors turns and tries to shoot Ellie. They miss. Ellie ducks, trying to protect JJ, and they engage in a crazy shootout. And Dina is on the table still, and she's starting to turn. Everyone is trying to kill each other now, though. And so there's no time to save Dina, though, because just as Ellie kills the last person, Dina jumps from the table, snarling insanely. It's too late. She's fully turned now. And so she goes for JJ, but Ellie jumps in the way to guard him. And she takes a huge bite in the arm herself, fending off this turned Dina now, and screams in tears and utter trauma. She shoots Dina point blank. JJ watches this in utter shock. It destroys her like nothing else. JJ is freaking out too, because he doesn't know that Ellie is immune. In his mind, he just lost both of them, and he's all fucking alone now. But she's not gonna tell him right now, though. She's too numb for her to say anything. And so Tommy calls out from the distance, having heard these gunshots, and she's running closer and closer, and he barges in, and he takes Ellie and JJ back to the camps, and he sees the hideous sight, and he is just as much for a loss of words. Tommy and Ellie have now found some peace with each other, and they're now sort of able to relate and associate with each other now based on this hidden guilt and demons that they hold up inside. And so now this will really drive Ellie's search for meaning now. We have two people, one nearing the end of his life, who feels his own guilt for Ellie's condition, contrasted with Ellie's private war with herself to have a reason to live at all. Maria is now taking care of JJ. Ellie is set on finding someone to get a cure out of her, but she doesn't want to say it. Much how she masked, I want to find Tommy in The Last of Us Part 2, and instead exacting revenge on Abby, this time around, she says she wants to find a new home for herself and JJ, but Tommy soon sees that she's searching for a new group that can lead to a cure. After searching around various camps and seeing what remains of the groups that they killed, they start to find a lead to a group that they could reach via radio. And they're supposedly working on a cure. It's a group that the witch doctor group wanted to do better than, because they hated them. And we know exactly who it is. She stumbles on a radio and she patches through to the woman now. She says, we have housing, we have families, we have food. Ellie asks, what's your name? The lady says, I'm with the Fireflies. Who are you? Ellie doesn't respond. She takes special interest in this, insisting that she needs to go, but Tommy doesn't understand. Why is she so eager? Why is she so obsessed to go to Catalina of all places? And so Ellie tries to make this a goodbye between her and Tommy until she finally just breaks and says, this is what I've always wanted to do. This is between me and nobody else. She needs to go alone. Tommy knows what she means though. He says, I'm not gonna let you go alone. Even though you think that nobody cares for you, that you have no one, I'm here. I at least want to see you off. They all embark for this island now, and they arrive, they check in, they don't say much until it's all interrupted. A nearby place is overrun with infected. Ellie and Tommy have no choice but to join and defend, and they run into Lev. But then they shortly run into Abby. They raise their guns at first, and Abby asks, why are you here? Abby and Ellie continue shooting off infected alongside each other. It's the biggest horde of infected we will have seen throughout the entire Last of Us series. I'm talking World War Z level. Tommy sees Abby now, and he is just in shock. He was not expecting to see her. But she's changed, she's so different. Then Ellie gets attacked by one of the infected, she gets injured, and suddenly Tommy and Abby are forced to work together now to get her the hell out of there. The infected are coming from the beaches, they're coming from everywhere. Tommy is forced to put aside his hate for Abby, and they're forced to bring Ellie to safety. Ellie wakes up in the hospital, and Abby's there. And we have this very beautiful, very serious conversation between Ellie and Abby now. Ellie talks about when she knew she really loved somebody. And it's not about Dina, it's about Riley. And she thinks maybe, just maybe, that's what she was chasing with Dina. But it doesn't have to be about this, it could be about anything. But we need to make sure that this is the equivalent of the porch scene between Ellie and Joel, but now with Ellie and Abby, ramped up times 10. Ellie gives herself up for the cure. Abby helms the procedure. Tommy and Ellie have a final moment together alongside JJ. Abby watches on the side. She thanks Ellie for giving herself up. And Ellie dies, giving some hope for the future. And that would conclude the trilogy of The Last of Us.
A message to the subscribers.
A message I have to the subscribers is, I'm sorry. No, I'm not sorry. Mike Pence said in the debate last night, I'm not going to apologize for being pro-life. I'm not going to apologize for being pro-Last of Us Part 2. Hopefully, really, I just hope Neil Druckmann sees this. He likely won't ever see this though, so that's really sad. If Neil Druckmann did see this though, I just want to, I know COVID's a big thing right now, but I'd probably just give him a big hug.